How did the most advanced civilization of the 18th century transform the loss of human reason into its most profitable weekend hobby? London, 1750. While the Enlightenment preaches the triumph of logic and the dignity of man, the city's most reliable theater operates behind the stone walls of Bedlam Royal Hospital, known to the streets as Bedlam. For the price of a single copper penny, less than the cost of a loaf of bread, the gates are thrown open to the public. On a typical Sunday, the screams emanating from the cells are not a medical alarm, but a return on investment for the thousands of tourists who flock here to poke, prod, and ridicule the inhabitants. In Bedlam, the lunatic is not a patient to be healed, but a commodity to be consumed. Here, the system does not seek to restore the mind, it seeks to display its ruins. The next 24 hours are not a lapse in judgment, but the calculated execution of an industry of misery. It is a day where the sun rises on a spectacle of the broken, and the curtain never falls. 4 a.m. The stone floors of Bedlam retain the damp chill of the Thames. In the darkness of the cells, there is no furniture, only thin layers of soiled straw that serve as both bed and toilet. For the 300 inhabitants, waking is not a return to consciousness, but a return to the physical reality of the system. The keepers arrive with the first light. Their role is not medical, it is custodial and corrective. The morning routine begins with the stabilization of the exhibits. This is where the heavy iron chains, standard issue for almost every new admission, are checked and tightened. These shackles are not temporary measures for the violent. They are permanent architectural feature of the patient's life, intended to break the spirit until it is amenable to treatment. By 7 a.m., the medical staff initiates the day's physic. Following the prevailing theory that madness is caused by an imbalance of internal humors, the routine is one of depletion. Forced purging and systemic bloodletting are performed with industrial regularity. The goal is to weaken the body to the point of silence. If a patient remains agitated or unruly, they are escorted to the circulating swing chair. Strapped tightly into the wooden frame, the patient is spun at high speeds for hours. The resulting vomiting and extreme disorientation are documented not as trauma, but as a successful resetting of the nerves. Breakfast follows, though it offers no restoration. The lunatic's diet is a calculation of minimum survival. A bowl of watered-down gruel and a piece of stale bread, often hard enough to break teeth. There is no communal dining. Food is passed through iron grates, consumed in the same shadows where the patient slept. As the morning progresses, the atmosphere shifts. The keepers begin to prepare the wards. This is the institutional pressure of the Sunday show. Straw is swept but not replaced. Chains are adjusted to ensure the most active patients are visible from the hallways. The hierarchy is clear. The keepers provide the order, the patients provide the spectacle, and the institution prepares to collect its gate receipts. By midday, the architectural isolation of Bedlam is breached. The heavy front gates swing open, and the silence of the morning is replaced by the rhythmic clatter of carriages and the chatter of London's leisure class. This is the Sunday show at its peak. For the visitors, the asylum is not a hospital, it is a gallery of the grotesque. The heat of the noon sun intensifies the atmosphere within the stone corridors. With no modern ventilation or drainage, the stench of unwashed bodies, stagnant waste, and spoiled straw becomes thick and suffocating. This sensory assault is part of the experience for the tourists who press scented handkerchiefs to their noses as they navigate the wards. As the bells of the city strike 12, the midday meal is served. This is the inferior meat ration, scraps of gristle and fat that have been deemed unfit for the city's markets. There is no dignity in the act of eating. Patients must consume their rations under the watchful, mocking eyes of the public. It is common for visitors to use long walking sticks to poke at patients through the bars, attempting to provoke a reaction, a scream, a dance, or a fit of rage to justify the price of their admission. The physical decline of the inhabitants is most visible under the harsh midday light. Years of malnutrition, combined with the systemic purging and bloodletting, have left many with skeletal frames and translucent skin. Injuries sustained from the heavy iron shackles or from the circulating swing chair go untreated. The medical staff views physical wounds as secondary to the corruption of the mind. In this system, the body is merely a vessel for the madness that the public has paid to witness. Exhaustion is ignored. There is no quiet corner for rest. To retreat into the shadows of a cell is to be invisible, and an invisible patient provides no value to the institution's gate receipts. The pressure to perform is constant, enforced by the whips of the keepers and the taunts of the crowd. Midday in Bedlam is the moment where the human being is fully erased, replaced by an exhibit in a zoo of the mind. As the afternoon sun begins to dip behind the London skyline, the commerce of Bedlam reaches its closing phase. The visitors begin to depart, their pockets lighter by a penny, their curiosity satisfied. But for those within the walls, the departure of the crowd does not signal relief. It signals the return to the cold administrative discipline of the institution. It is during these hours that the admission process often takes place. Bedlam is a machine fed by the desperation of the city. Families unable or unwilling to manage the burden of a mentally ill relative arrive at the gates. It is a financial transaction. A significant fee is paid to the governors, and in return, the family is relieved of their shame. Once the papers are signed, the relative is stripped of their civilian identity. They are no longer a father, a daughter, or a craftsman. They are a new number in the ledger, immediately subjected to the standard initiation, the removal of clothing, and the first locking of the iron shackles. In Bedlam, your entry is a burial while you are still breathing. Evening brings the second physic of the day. The surgeons returned for the evening bloodletting, a systemic attempt to quiet the wards for the night. The belief remains absolute. A body drained of its fluids is a body that cannot rebel. For those who survived the midday heat and the tourists' taunts, the physical decline is now profound. The malnutrition and constant purging leave the patients in a state of lethargic vulnerability. The final meal of the day is served at dusk, another portion of watered-down gruel, often consumed in total silence. The religious authority of the era occasionally manifests here, as a chaplain might read a sermon on the sin of a fallen mind, a psychological weight intended to reinforce the patient's status as a moral failure. As the oil lamps are lit in the keepers' quarters, the wards are left in increasing shadow. Surveillance remains constant, but it is now silent. The keepers patrol the halls with heavy whips, not looking for signs of health, but for any sign of irregularity that might disturb the night's order. The system has finished its public performance for the day. Now it settles into the private labor of confinement. By 10 p.m., Bedlam retreats into a complete, suffocating darkness. In the 18th century, light is a luxury the state does not provide to the fallen. There are no candles in the cells, no oil lamps in the corridors, only the moonlight filtering through high iron-grated windows. For the patients, sleep is not a reprieve, but another form of endurance. The body, weakened by the day's bloodletting and the meager rations of gruel, must settle onto the damp, lice-ridden straw. The iron shackles remain locked, the weight of the metal pulling at bruised wrists and ankles even in rest. In this silence, the sounds of the asylum change. The performative screams of the Sunday show are replaced by the low, rhythmic moans of the sick and the rattling of chains as bodies shift in search of warmth. The night is also a period of profound physical danger. With the medical staff gone and only a skeleton crew of keepers remaining, the treatment of the mind becomes a matter of raw survival. Fever is common, the result of untreated infections from the shackles or the systemic purging that leaves the immune system decimated. If a patient dies during the night, they often remain unnoticed until the first rounds of the morning. In the darkness of Bedlam, the distinction between sleep and death is thin and, for the system, largely irrelevant. There is no privacy here and no safety. The night belongs to the shadows of the stone walls and the cold air rising from the Thames. It is a period of absolute vulnerability, where the individual is left alone with a mind that the world has rejected and a body that the institution has hollowed out. The night is not an end to the day's labor. It is the silent continuation of the same crushing weight. 4 a.m. The cycle of Bedlam returns to its point of origin. The keeper's keys rattle in the locks, and the first light of the new day reveals the same damp straw and the same iron shackles. In the administrative offices, the gate receipts from the Sunday show are counted and recorded. To the governors of Bedlam, the day has been a success. The accounts are balanced, the public has been entertained, and the unruly have been quieted through the systemic application of force. There is no resolution here. No one has been cured. The madness has simply been managed, displayed, and monetized. Tomorrow, the carriages will return, the pennies will be collected, and the circulating swing chair will begin its rotation once again. Bedlam is not a failure of 18th century logic. It is the perfection of it, the total commodification of human suffering. In this system, there is no escape, only the relentless continuity of the machine. The sun rises over the Thames, and the ledger of the broken remains open.